My name is Jordan. I'm 32, and I live in Dallas, Texas. I work as a sales manager, which means driving late at night sometimes. One night, after a long day, I was heading home, driving down a dark, empty stretch of highway. It was around 11:30 p.m., and there wasn't a single car in sight. Just me, the road, and the night. I was about halfway home when red and blue lights suddenly flashed in my rearview mirror. I wasn't speeding, so I figured it was just a routine stop. Maybe a taillight was out. I pulled over to the side of the road, rolled down my window, and waited for the officer to approach. When the man got to my car, something about him immediately felt off. His uniform looked too clean, like it had never been worn, and his patrol car was almost brand new, way too shiny. He didn't greet me or explain why he stopped me. Instead, he snapped at me to hand over my license and registration. His tone was sharp, aggressive. I handed him my license, but I held onto my registration, stalling. "Why did you pull me over?" I asked. "You were driving erratically," he snapped, but I hadn't been. I knew something was wrong. I glanced at his badge. It didn't have a name on it, just a blank, shiny surface. That's when I knew this guy wasn't a real cop. "Can I see your badge?" I asked, trying to keep calm. He froze for a second, then sighed angrily. "I don't have time for this," he growled, his voice growing sharper. "Step out of the car. Now." My heart was racing. I could feel that getting out of the car would be a huge mistake. I kept my grip on the steering wheel, feeling my pulse thudding in my ears. The man took a step closer, his hand resting on what looked like a gun. I said, "Step out of the car," he shouted. Without thinking, I slammed my car into drive and hit the gas. The tires screeched as I sped off, my heart pounding. For a second, I thought I'd lost him, but when I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw his car right behind me, lights flashing, engine roaring. I floored it, but the road stretched on, with no exits or turns, just an endless highway. My hands were shaking as I kept glancing back. He was gaining on me, getting closer and closer. Panic gripped me, but I pushed the gas pedal harder, praying I could outrun him. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a loud crash behind me. I looked in the mirror and saw his car veer off the road, skidding into the ditch. Smoke started rising from his car. He'd lost control and wrecked. But something didn't feel right. I slowed down slightly, peering back to make sure he wasn't still coming after me. That's when I saw him get out of his car, limping but determined, holding what looked like a gun in his hand. He started walking back toward the road. My pulse skyrocketed. I couldn't stop. I hit the gas again, speeding down the highway. After what felt like an eternity, I finally saw a sign for a gas station a few miles ahead. The thought of being somewhere lit and populated gave me a sliver of hope. I decided to stop there and call for help. When I pulled into the gas station, it was mostly deserted, just a single truck parked by the pumps. I ran inside and found an older man behind the counter. My words tumbled out in a frantic rush as I explained what had happened. He nodded, grabbing his phone, and dialed 911 immediately. But before he could finish the call, the chime above the door rang. I turned and saw the fake cop standing there, his face twisted with rage. He had caught up to me. The man behind the counter froze, his hand hovering over the phone. "You really shouldn't have run," the fake cop said, stepping closer, his hand resting on the butt of his gun. I backed up, my heart hammering in my chest. The man behind the counter must have realized something was wrong because he reached under the register and pulled out a shotgun. "Get out of here," he shouted, his voice trembling but firm. The fake cop hesitated, his eyes darting between me and the shotgun. Then, without a word, he bolted out the door. I ran to the window and saw him get into a rusted sedan parked around the corner, peeling out onto the highway. The police arrived minutes later. I gave them everything I could. His description, the patrol car he was driving, and the direction he'd gone. The officers assured me they'd catch him, but I still didn't feel safe. The man was out there somewhere, and he knew I'd seen his face. For weeks, I couldn't sleep, constantly looking over my shoulder, expecting to see his car following me again. Then, one night, I got a call from the police. They had caught him hiding in a rundown motel a few states over. He had a stash of fake police uniforms, weapons, and stolen belongings from his victims. The relief I felt was overwhelming, but it didn't erase the fear. Even now, months later, I can't drive at night without feeling my stomach twist into knots. Every set of flashing lights in my rearview mirror sends my heart racing, and I can't shake the thought of what might have happened if I'd stepped out of my car that night. I was lucky, but not everyone was.